Hi everyone, I'm Bhavuk. I'm a tech lead working in applied AI at Google, where I focus on turning AI research into scalable products used by millions of people. Today, I want to talk about something that I think does not get enough honest attention but is very important. Where is AI in clinical diagnostics actually saving lives, and where are we fooling ourselves? There's a lot of excitement, a lot of investment, and a lot of impressive demos. But the gap between a published model and a tool that changes patient outcomes is enormous. That's what we are going to unpack today. Before I dive in, a quick note: the views here are my own, not Google's, and nothing I will share draws on confidential work. This talk comes from my broader experience in the field and my reading of how diagnostic AI is evolving across the industry. Let's start with the landscape first. The FDA has now authorized over 1,400 AI and machine learning enabled medical devices, with 295 cleared in 2025 alone, according to their official tracker. A report by Markets and Markets projects the healthcare AI market will exceed $110 billion by 2030. These are staggering numbers, but here's the uncomfortable truth. A scoping review published in Nature Digital Medicine by Muralidharan and colleagues in 2024 looked at all 692 FDA approved AI devices at the time. They found that only 1.9%, fewer than 1 in 50, included a link to any peer reviewed scientific publication with safety and efficacy data. The vast majority of these devices reach the market without publicly available clinical evidence that they actually work as intended. So we have this massive gap between what's been approved and what's actually being used. And the question I keep coming back to is why? What separates the tool that make it into daily practice from the ones that gather dust? I think the core issue is that most teams approach diagnostic AI the wrong way around. The common approach, and I've seen this many times, is we have this great data set, we have a model architecture that works well. Let's go find a clinical use case for it. It's technology looking for a problem. The better approach, however, flips this entirely. We should start by asking, is this a problem worth solving? Is there a genuine gap in care? And only then ask whether AI can genuinely improve outcomes here. This distinction sounds obvious, but in practice, it's where most projects go wrong, often before a single line of code is written. So, I want to share a simple framework: four questions that I use to evaluate whether a diagnostic AI opportunity is likely to deliver real impact. These aren't meant to be a rigid scorecard. Think of them as a structured way to pressure test your assumptions before you invest months or years of effort. The four questions are: 1. Is the clinical problem meaningful? That is, the clinical significance. Second, is the data ready? That is, the data readiness. Third, will it fit naturally into clinician workflows? Workflow fit. And four, can it actually improve real patient outcomes and not just model metrics? That is, the outcome impact. Let's walk through each one of these with examples. The first question: is the clinical problem meaningful? This seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how often teams skip this step or give it only superficial thought. There are three sub questions here. First, disease burden. Does this condition cause significant morbidity, mortality, or healthcare costs? If you're solving a problem that affects a small number of patients with mild outcomes, AI might not be the right investment. Second, diagnostic gap. Is there an actual unmet need? Are diagnoses being missed? Are they being made too late? Are there access barriers, like not enough specialists in a region? And third, actionability. This is the one people forget. Even if your AI detects something accurately, how does that detection change what happens next? If there is no effective treatment or the finding does not alter the care pathway, then accurate detection alone does not help the patient. Not every clinical problem needs AI. We should focus where the gap is large and the stakes are high. Diabetic retinopathy is one of the best examples of diagnostic AI done right, and it's instructive to understand why. Let's look at the numbers. There are roughly 537 million people living with diabetes globally. Diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of preventable blindness in working age adults. And yet, in many regions, fewer than half of diabetic patients get their annual eye screening. Why? Because screening traditionally requires an ophthalmologist. I'll repeat this again. Why? Because screening traditionally requires an ophthalmologist or trained grader, and there simply aren't enough of them, especially in rural areas and developing countries. The condition has clear, well defined grading criteria. Early detection prevents up to 95% of severe vision loss, and FDA approved systems like IDXDR can now perform autonomous screening in a primary care setting, no specialist needed at the point of care. This is a textbook case. High disease burden, a clear diagnostic gap driven by specialist shortage, a well defined criteria, and early detection that directly changes outcomes. Every box is checked. Question 2: is the data ready? This is where many promising projects hit a wall. You can have the most meaningful clinical problem in the world, but if the data isn't there to support a reliable model, you're stuck. There are four dimensions to evaluate. First, volume and quality. Do you have enough labeled examples with reliable ground truth? Is it representative of the diversity you'll encounter in practice? Second, standardization. Are imaging protocols consistent? Are lab formats and EHR structures compatible across sites? Or is everything fragmented? Third, bias in representation. This is critical. Does your training data reflect the patient populations you'll actually serve? Think demographics, device types, clinical sites. A model trained on data from one academic medical center may fail in a community hospital. And finally, regulatory and privacy considerations. Do you have HIPAA or GDPR compliant data pipelines? Do you have proper consent frameworks? The bottom line is a great model plus poor data equals unreliable diagnostics at scale. Let's look at digital pathology as an example of data challenges in practice. The data challenge here is significant. Whole slide images can be 100,000 by 100,000 pixels, and these are enormous files. Staining varies across labs, scanners, and tissue preparation methods, creating what we call a domain shift. And getting export annotations is expensive and slow because you need trained pathologists to label the data. But the field has been making real progress. Stain normalization techniques are reducing domain shift across institutions. Self supervised pre training on unlabeled slides is reducing the annotation burden. You don't need a pathologist to label every single slide. And multi site validation data sets like TCGA are enabling fairer and more representative benchmarking. The lesson here is that data readiness is not binary, it's something you actively work on. But you need to be honest about where you stand before you commit to building a product. Question 3, and this is the one I think is most underestimated: will it fit naturally into specialists' workflows? I've split this into two sides: friction and flow. On the friction side, there are things that kill adoption. If your tool requires a separate app, a separate login, or a different screen, that's friction. If it adds steps to an already complex workflow, that's friction. If the output is ambiguous or hard to act on, that's even more friction. If the specialists don't trust the AI's reasoning, that's another point for friction. And if the results arrive too late to inform any decision, that's fatal friction. On the flow side, we have the things that drive adoption. The tool is embedded in the existing EHR or lab information systems. Results appear at the exact moment the clinician is making a decision. Outputs are clear and actionable, not raw probability scores. The tool was designed for specialists from day one, and critically, it reduces cognitive load rather than adding to it. The best model in the world fails if nobody uses it. And this is not a technical problem, it's a design and implementation problem. Here's an example of workflow integration done well: radiology worklist prioritization. The flow is simple and elegant. An image is acquired, the AI triages and flags it. Urgent cases get prioritized in the worklist. The radiologist reads the critical ones first. Notice what's happening here. The AI does not replace the radiologist. It does not make the diagnosis. It reshuffles the worklist so that critical findings, things like large vessel occlusion or pulmonary embolism, get read minutes to hours faster than they otherwise would. This is a pure workflow enhancement, and it fits seamlessly into existing PACS systems. The radiologist still makes the final call, and the time saved on critical findings can be the difference between life and death. This pattern, augmentation at a natural decision point embedded in existing tools with clear time to action benefit, is what great diagnostic AI looks like in practice. The fourth and final question: can it improve real patient outcomes? I want to draw your attention to this spectrum. Most AI research papers and most product pitches focus on the first column: AUC sensitivity and specificity. The model performs well on a test set. That's necessary, but it's just the beginning. Clinical validity asks, does it detect the condition in real world population, not just in curated test set, but in the messy reality of diverse patient and setting? Clinical utility asks, does the detection actually change clinical decisions? if the clinician would have caught it anyway, or if the detection does not alter the treatment plan, the AI is not adding value. And patient outcome, the final bar, asks, does this actually improve health, survival, or quality of life? This accuracy trap is real. A model with 99% sensitivity means nothing if the finding was already being caught, if the treatment path does not change, or if the alert is simply ignored. Most publications stop at column 1. We need to push towards column 4. Now, let me share a cautionary tale: AI for sepsis prediction. The promise was compelling. Sepsis kills hundreds of thousands of people a year. According to a study reviewed in NEJM journal, watch, each hour of delay in treatment increases the odds of death by roughly 4%. If AI could predict sepsis hours before clinical onset, it could save thousands of lives. The reality has been sobering, though. A landmark 2021 study by Wong and colleagues in JAMA Internal Medicine externally validated EPIC's widely used sepsis prediction model, deployed at hundreds of US hospitals, and found it missed two-thirds of sepsis patients while generating alerts on 18% of all hospitalized patients. That's a massive burden of alert fatigue. A separate study published in the Journal of Emergency Medicine found no significant difference in hospital mortality. Sorry, I'll repeat this again. A separate study published in the Journal of Emergency Medicine found no significant difference in hospital mortality after implementing the systems. The lessons here are important. First, predicting a condition is not the same as improving outcomes for that condition. The prediction is just one step in a long chain that includes alert delivery, clinical response, and treatment effectiveness. Second, alert fatigue is a real and serious problem. If specialists are bombarded with false positive, they start ignoring alerts entirely, including the real ones. And third, you need prospective clinical trials to validate outcomes. Retrospective AUC tells you the model works on historical data, but it does not tell you it works in practice. Now, let's put the framework into practice with a comparative view. I've scored 5 use cases across our 4 dimensions, and you can see how different the profiles look. Diabetic retinopathy screening scores high across the board. It's a deploy case. Clear clinical need, standardized imaging data, seamless workflow integration, and proven outcomes. Chest X ray triage is similar: high significance, good data, strong outcome evidence. Workflow fit is medium because integration varies across institutions, but it's still a deploy case. Pathology cancer grading is a pilot case. The clinical need is high, but data readiness and workflow integration are still being worked out. The outcome evidence is growing, but not yet definitive. Sepsis prediction, as we discussed, scores high on clinical significance but low on workflow fit and outcome impact. This is a rethink case. The problem matters, but the current approach isn't working. And rare disease genomics is in the research phase. The data sets are small, the workflow integration is unclear, but the potential is there for the future. This is not a rigid scoring system. It's a conversation starter to challenge assumptions early and allocate resources wisely. So, where are we actually saving lives? Let me highlight 4 areas with real evidence. Diabetic retinopathy. Autonomous screening is expanding access globally, reaching patients who would never have seen an ophthalmologist. Chest X ray triage, flagging TB, pneumothorax, and other critical findings in high volume settings, particularly in low resource environments. Cardiac arrhythmia detection. ECG based AI is catching arterial fibrillation before a stroke occurs. Apple Watch studies and Aleph Cor's Cardia Mobile have demonstrated this at consumer scale. Breast cancer screening. AI as a second reader in mammography is reducing missed cancers. Studies in Europe have shown AI can match or exceed the performance of a second human radiologist. What's the common thread? Every one of these has a clear clinical need, available in well characterized data, natural workflow integration, and evidence of real patient outcomes. That's the framework in action. Now let's look at the other side: categories that sound exciting but rarely deliver in practice. AI only diagnosis without a clinician in the loop. Regulatory barriers, trust issues, and liability concerns make this extremely difficult. The workflow fit just is not there yet for most conditions. General purpose diagnose everything models. These lack the specificity needed to outperform focused task specific tools on any single condition. Clinical significance gets diluted. Retrospective only validation. High AUC in published papers, but never tested in a real clinical setting. Without prospective evidence, you can't claim outcome impact. And rare diseases with tiny data sets. The clinical need may be real, but data readiness is a fundamental blocker. You simply cannot train a reliable model on a handful of examples. Notice that each of these maps cleanly to one of our four framework questions. The framework helps you spot these failure modes early. Let me close with some practical guidance for teams working in this space. 1. Start with the specialist and not the model. Spend time in the clinical environment, shadow the people who will use your tool, understand the actual decision point, the time pressure, and the information gaps before writing a single line of code. 2. Define your outcome metric early. Is success measured by sensitivity, time to diagnosis, 30-day mortality, or readmission rates? Agree on this with your clinical partners before you build and not after. Moving the goalpost later is a recipe for disappointment. Third, plan for prospective validation from day one. Budget the time, the money, and the clinical partnerships. Retrospective performance is a starting point, not an endpoint. Four, design for trust and transparency. Clinicians need to understand why the AI flags system. Black box predictions breed skepticism. Explainability isn't a nice to have, it's a prerequisite for adoption. And these aren't just best practices, they are the difference between a published paper and a tool that saves lives. Let me leave you with five key takeaways. The bottleneck in diagnostic AI isn't model accuracy, it's problem selection. Choosing what to work on matters more than how you build it. The four question framework, clinical significance, data readiness, workflow fit, and outcome evidence, gives you a structured way to filter hype from genuine impact. The biggest successes all share a pattern. They augment specialists at natural decision points. They don't try to replace them, they make them faster, more accurate, and more efficient. Prospective validation and real world integration are where most promising projects stall. This is the valley of death for diagnostic AI, and it's where we need to invest more attention and resources. And finally, start with the patient problem. Everything else follows from there. If you get the problem right, the technology will follow. If you get the problem wrong, no amount of engineering will be able to save you. Thank you for all your time and attention. I'd love to hear your experiences, whether you have seen these patterns in your own work or whether you disagree with any of this. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.